Have you ever wondered why someone who was sharp and vibrant at 75 seems to fade just a few years later? What's truly happening after 80 isn't simply genetics or luck. It's something far more nuanced that almost nobody talks about. Most of us assume aging is inevitable, but what if the quiet decline many experience isn't actually necessary? In the next few minutes, I'll reveal 5 hidden factors that silently determine whether someone thrives or struggles past their 80th birthday. These aren't the usual suspects you've heard before. The good news? Once you recognize these patterns, you can actually do something about them while there's still time. These insights might completely transform how you approach your later years. What truly makes the difference between someone who merely survives past 80 and someone who continues to thrive with energy and purpose? Let's find out. The first unexpected reason many don't live long after 80 is the quiet disappearance of microsocial engagement. These aren't your deep friendships or family gatherings, but rather those small, seemingly insignificant daily interactions. Saying hello to the mailman, joking with the grocery cashier, or nodding to a neighbor walking their dog. Those tiny moments of contact weren't just pleasant, they were regulating your nervous system, reinforcing your sense of belonging, and keeping your brain's social wiring sharp. But after 80, many stop going to stores themselves, avoid chatting with strangers because their hearing isn't what it used to be, or stop walking outside because the weather feels too harsh. Have you noticed how quickly these small social touch points can fade away? When these brief connections disappear, something vital goes with them. I've known men in their 80s who stayed sharp simply because they walked to the same coffee shop each morning, said hello to the same staff, and nodded to the same 3 people on their route. That 5-minute stretch of human connection wasn't just routine, it was lifeblood. The brain responds to loneliness, both deep and subtle kinds, as a stressor. It changes hormone levels, raises inflammation, and weakens immunity. Most critically, it begins to shrink the networks responsible for memory, attention, and emotional regulation. In plain terms, it makes you feel older, faster. This is particularly concerning because our modern world makes it increasingly easy to avoid these interactions entirely. With online shopping, delivery services, and digital entertainment, someone can go days or even weeks without speaking to another person face to face. For a 30-year-old, this might just be convenient. For an 80-year-old, it could be silently catastrophic. Studies from places with high concentrations of centenarians, like Okinawa, Japan, and Sardinia, Italy, consistently show that daily social interaction, even brief exchanges, correlates strongly with extended longevity. In these communities, the layout of towns and daily customs almost force people to interact regularly, creating unconscious social exercise that keeps the mind engaged and the spirit connected. If you found yourself talking less to people during the day or stopped initiating casual conversations, it's time to reverse that pattern. Those brief moments of connection, even ones that seem forgettable, are quietly telling your brain and body you still matter. That message might be the most powerful medicine for staying alive, not just in years, but in spirit. Another silent reason many people don't make it far past 80 is what initially seems like wisdom: being careful. There's a fine line between being prudent and becoming overly cautious, and once that line is crossed, the consequences are rarely immediate, but always cumulative. Maybe you slipped once on the stairs or nearly lost your balance on the sidewalk, so you decided to cut back on walking outside. You stopped bending, reaching, climbing into car back seats. People around you applaud this caution. Don't push it, they say. And before you realize it, you've created a life that's safe but stagnant. What happens when our movements become so restricted by fear? When movement stops, so does strength, not just in your legs or arms, but in your coordination, balance, and inner stability. Your body isn't like a machine that rests to stay efficient. It's more like a garden that needs tending. When activity slows to a trickle, things don't just stay the same, they weaken. I knew a man named Walter, 82, who stopped his evening walks after one slip on a rainy day. No broken bones, just a scare, Within 6 months, he'd lost 10 pounds of muscle. His legs felt like jelly. Walter didn't stop because he was weak. He became weak because he stopped. What makes this particularly insidious is how it masquerades as self-care. Family members encourage it. "Mom, don't carry those groceries." "I'll do it." Friends reinforce it. "John, at our age, we shouldn't be climbing ladders." The medical system sometimes inadvertently supports it. "Let's be cautious and limit your activity for now." Each suggestion comes from a place of genuine concern, but together they create a cocoon of inactivity that slowly suffocates vitality. The body responds to demands placed upon it. This is true at 18, 48, and 88. When those demands decrease, so does function. Research from the field of physical therapy shows that even severely deconditioned older adults can regain significant strength and mobility through progressive, appropriate exercise. One landmark study found that nursing home residents in their 90s increased their leg strength by 174% after just 8 weeks of resistance training. Some participants were able to stop using walkers and canes they had depended on for years. I'm not suggesting ignoring real risks. There are smart ways to protect yourself, but there's a profound difference between managing risk and surrendering to it. When fear dictates your movements, the body starts to forget how to move at all. Have you been doing less not because you physically can't, but because you're afraid of what might happen? Movement is how the body remembers it's still needed. It's how your systems stay online, your brain stays alert, and your heart keeps pumping with purpose. Is any of this resonating with you so far? Drop a comment if you're seeing these patterns in yourself or someone you care about. Your experience might help others recognize what's happening in their own lives. There's a silent clock inside your body that doesn't tick, but governs almost everything. Your mood, metabolism, immune system, even how your brain repairs itself at night. After 80, this internal clock, your circadian rhythm, becomes especially sensitive to disruption. One major reason it goes off track: not enough light during the day and too much light at night. Maybe you've started sleeping more during daytime hours, stopped going outside regularly, or increased evening screen time. Each change seems harmless, but together they confuse your body about when to be alert and when to rest. When was the last time you felt truly refreshed after waking up? The body relies on natural light to stay in rhythm. Morning brightness tells your brain it's time to wake up and get moving, while darkness signals the release of melatonin for deep, healing sleep. When these signals get scrambled, you might find it harder to fall asleep or wake up feeling groggy despite adequate time in bed. What many don't realize is that this disruption isn't just about feeling tired. It fundamentally alters how your body repairs itself. During proper deep sleep, your brain clears out toxic proteins associated with dementia, your cells perform essential maintenance work, and your immune system strengthens itself against pathogens. Without this quality recovery time, these processes become compromised. For those over 80, this becomes even more critical because the body's natural ability to maintain these systems is already diminished. Adding disrupted sleep essentially accelerates the aging process at the cellular level. Studies from Stanford University's Sleep Research Center have found that just 1 week of disrupted sleep can alter blood sugar levels and hormonal patterns in older adults, mimicking patterns seen in people decades older. Over time, this sleep disruption affects more than just energy. It weakens immune function, destabilizes mood, and increases cognitive decline risk. There's also vitamin D production, which naturally decreases after 80, making regular outdoor exposure even more critical. I once spoke with Helen, 84, who felt increasingly tired and disoriented despite normal blood work and no medication changes. The turning point? Her doctor simply recommended 20 minutes by an open window each morning and turning off screens an hour before bed. Within 2 weeks, her sleep improved. So did her memory and mood. It wasn't a new pill, it was light. This connection between light exposure and health becomes especially important in northern climates or during winter months when natural daylight is limited. Many people over 80 find themselves spending these darker seasons almost entirely indoors, sometimes going days without significant natural light exposure. Some geriatricians now recommend light therapy lamps during winter months, particularly for older adults who struggle with seasonal mood changes or sleep disturbances. The body doesn't just age from wear and tear. It ages from disorganization, from systems falling out of sync. Restoring your light exposure and daily rhythms tells your body that even at 85, you're still on schedule, still in motion, still here. By the time many reach their 80s, they've carried more loss than most younger folks can imagine. Spouses, siblings, friends, sometimes even children. What's rarely acknowledged is how these losses accumulate, not just in memory, but physically in the body. What often happens isn't just grief, but emotional suppression, the quiet habit of swallowing pain instead of expressing it, putting on a brave face because you feel you should be used to it by now, or because there's no one left who truly understands. When was the last time you allowed yourself to fully feel what you've been carrying? The body doesn't forget unprocessed grief. It doesn't disappear. It gets stored. Over time, that emotional weight becomes physical, affecting your immune system, digestion, sleep, and hormones. It puts your nervous system in constant quiet tension, and the hardest part is it happens silently. Modern neuroscience has revealed that emotional pain activates many of the same neural pathways as physical pain. When we suppress emotions, we're essentially asking our nervous system to continuously manage this internal pain without resolution. This creates what researchers call allostatic load, the wear and tear that comes from chronic stress and unresolved emotional tension. The physiological impact is profound. Studies show that people who regularly suppress emotions have higher levels of inflammatory markers in their bloodstream, increased rates of autoimmune disorders, and more rapid cellular aging as measured by telomere length, the protective caps on our chromosomes that shorten as we age. I remember George, 86, who lost his wife of 60 years. He didn't cry much. "Not my way," he'd say. Within a year, he'd lost weight, stopped socializing, and developed insomnia. Not from illness, but from sorrow his body was never allowed to release. This stoicism is particularly common among older generations who grew up with messages like, "Keep a stiff upper lip," or "Don't dwell on your troubles." Many were raised to believe that showing emotional vulnerability was inappropriate or self-indulgent. While this approach might have served them well during difficult historical periods, it becomes problematic when applied throughout life without relief. What keeps people alive well past 80 often isn't just physical strength, it's emotional ventilation. Having safe outlets to say, "I miss her," or "I feel alone," without judgment lets the heart breathe again. And when the heart breathes, the body can heal. People who live long tend to have some outlet, a trusted friend, a journal, faith, community, or even therapy that helps unpack the stories they've carried for decades. What gets expressed can transform. What gets buried ferments. In recent years, more therapists have begun specializing in later life counseling, recognizing that emotional processing in our 80s can be just as important, perhaps even more so, than at earlier stages of life. These specialists help older adults unpack not just recent losses, but sometimes decades of accumulated emotional weight that has never been fully acknowledged. If something feels heavy inside you, consider finding a space for it. The heart can only carry so much before it starts to quietly shut down. And if you want to thrive past 80, not just surviving but truly living, you have to let yourself feel too. Has this video helped you understand something you've been experiencing? Let me know in the comments. I read everyone and your perspective matters to this community. Perhaps the most invisible reason many don't thrive past 80 is the slow erosion of daily purpose. Not some grand philosophical mission, but the simple kind that makes you get out of bed with something to do, somewhere to go, someone to see. Purpose can be watering plants before the sun gets too hot, feeding a neighborhood cat, writing to your granddaughter, or fixing a squeaky hinge. But when these little routines slip away, when mornings arrive with no reason to move, and evenings bring nothing worth reflecting on, something inside begins to quietly shut down. What small purpose gets you out of bed each morning? The body listens to the mind, and when the mind no longer sees a reason to push forward, the body follows. Appetite drops, movement slows, and without purpose, the systems that regulate health start to go quiet. Not because they're broken, but because they're waiting for a reason to switch back on. This connection between purpose and physical health isn't philosophical speculation. It's backed by research. A landmark study from Rush University Medical Center followed more than 1,200 older adults and found that those with high purpose in life were approximately 2.4 times less likely to develop Alzheimer's disease than those with low purpose. Another study published in JAMA Psychiatry found that people with a strong sense of purpose had a 23% reduction in all-cause mortality over a 14-year period. The biological mechanisms are fascinating. Purpose appears to reduce stress hormones like cortisol, increase beneficial neurochemicals like oxytocin and serotonin, and improve immune function. It even affects gene expression, activating genes associated with reducing inflammation and deactivating those linked to disease progression. It happens gradually. Maybe your weekly bridge game got canceled, your church group stopped meeting, family visits grew less frequent, or your volunteer role ended when your knees started aching. You tell yourself it's normal aging, but deep down you feel the days blending together, each one quieter than the last. For many older adults, retirement becomes a double-edged sword. After decades of work providing structure and meaning, suddenly there's an abundance of unstructured time without the built-in purpose that a job provides. Without intentional replacement of that purpose, a slow drift begins. I once met Ruth, 88, who seemed more alive than most people half her age. She wasn't wealthy or in perfect health, but she had something that never left her: routine. Every Monday, postcards to shut-ins from her church. Every Thursday, soup for a local shelter. Every afternoon, watching neighborhood children walk home from school, waving as they passed. What stood out about Ruth wasn't the magnitude of her activities, but their consistency in connection to others. Her small actions created ripples that returned to her in the form of gratitude, recognition, and the knowledge that her presence mattered in tangible ways. The body stays alive as long as it believes it's needed. Purpose, even the smallest kind, tells your cells to keep repairing, your organs to keep functioning, your brain to keep learning. When you lose that sense of relevance, the flame starts to dim. In cultures where elders remain integrated into family and community life, where their wisdom is sought and their contributions valued, people tend to live longer, healthier lives. The contrast with societies where older adults are segregated and marginalized is stark and reflected in health outcomes. People who thrive beyond 80 usually have something anchoring their days: a garden, pet, journal, ritual, phone call, or morning prayer. What matters isn't the scale, but the consistency. Knowing when you open your eyes, there's a reason to rise. One simple approach that has shown remarkable results is the creation of a purpose portfolio, a deliberate collection of activities, responsibilities, and connections that provide meaning throughout the week. Just as we diversify financial investments, diversifying sources of purpose creates resilience against inevitable changes and losses. As we close, I want to leave you with a simple but powerful truth. Most people don't fade after 80 because of a single moment, not a diagnosis, fall, or birthday. It's the slow, quiet fading of habits, rhythms, and reasons to stay engaged, often too subtle to notice until something inside feels dimmer. The good news? Just as these shifts happen gradually, they can be reversed gradually. One walk outside, one extra conversation, one morning stretch, one meaningful action at a time. The physiology of aging responds remarkably to these small changes. Studies on neuroplasticity show that even the aging brain remains capable of forming new connections and adapting to new challenges well into the 90s. The circulatory system can improve its efficiency with gentle, consistent movement. The immune system strengthens with better sleep, reduced stress, and social connection. Which of these 5 factors surprised you most? Which felt uncomfortably familiar? Most importantly, which one will you address, even in a small way, starting today? You have more power than you think, not to stop aging, but to transform how you age. If you guard your rhythms, protect your purpose, and honor what needs to be felt, you won't just reach 80, you'll live beyond it fully, deeply on your terms. I'd love to hear from you. What insight from today's video resonated most deeply? How might it change something in your life? Your experiences and thoughts matter enormously to this community. If you found value here today, consider subscribing so we can continue this journey together. Until next time, remember that how we age isn't inevitable. It's a path we shape with each day's choices.